I think everybody's reported these days, they just don't know it.
Okay. So we can go ahead and get started. I sent you all the packets and you have hard copies in front of you. For the first thing in your packet is our existing ordinance that you all did in, I think, 2017, 2019, that time frame. And then we have 5 other counties to compare. We don't need to write a new ordinance today. That's not the goal. We just mainly need to look at our ordinance and decide if it's sufficient. And if not, which specific areas do we maybe need to beef up? Just speaking for me, and I'm interested what you all think, after looking at these other counties, I don't think our ordinance is lacking maybe as much as some had thought. There are some areas like additional studies being required and maybe increasing the setbacks in some areas that I definitely think we could beef up ours with. But I do think for this project, since it's so far along and we waited so long to go to the zoning committee, that any of these things that we do want to address in our ordinance, maybe for the torch project, we could address them as conditions. And then for all future projects, before we approve any more or hear any more, that could give us time to beef up the ordinance. So that's just my 2 cents. We can start wherever you all would like. Yeah.
Well, before we get started, and if you notice the thing that I wrote up, I put a 30-year limit on it. Everything that we've been told about torch is 30 years, 30 years, 30 years. When we left the other night, wait a minute, that may be him coming. Let's see if he.
So, yeah.
Is this what,
That's
is this what you mailed?
Mr. Big, how are you?
Is this what you mailed? Cause I couldn't get it on.
No,
Yeah, that's what I emailed to y'all. Roy just brought that in.
I just brought this because I just got this yesterday from the Greensville guys. Anyway, back to what I was talking about.
Missed anything? We just started.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You're good. You're good.
Is that the other night after the meeting, I think it was Dennis and I were standing out on the porch talking, and here come Joanne, because Joanne wanted to, you know, she likes to talk. And so she got up there and I was like, and I said something about the 30-year thing. And she was like, oh, no. I said, what do you mean, oh, no? And she said, well, and this came right out of Joanne Webb's mouth. She said, no, she said, after 20 years, when those panels are only 80% productive, we're going to replace them with brand new panels because they still have value to be sold to like these third world countries or whatever. They're, you know, they don't need them at 100%. And I said, so then you're looking at going another 30 years? She said, oh, we plan on running this thing from 75 to 100 years. Has anybody mentioned 100 years to you or 75 years?
No,
And it
Didn't they-
blindsided me.
That's the one.
have in there after.
That's the one in Powhatan.
No, the one they proposed here in Amelia. And so
Well, if I went and grabbed all the torch stuff too. I didn't bring it,
I've got the torch stuff right here. Someone wants to look at it.
right, just because I don't remember verbatim what they put in their narrative.
Everything, I read every word of it. Everything I've seen says 30 years.
Right.
But then after 30 years, then they can
Probably like an option.
option.
And that's why the thing that I wrote up, I put in there that it would expire in 30 years unless they came back to the county and requested that it be done again. You know, because, you know, if we pass something, there's the torch one. If we pass something that they're talking about, they're planning on running for 100 years, 75 years, I mean, our grandkids are going to have to move forward with stuff, great grandkids.
And
I don't know that that's.
Talk to our attorney about, because I just don't know as counties, and maybe there are no regulations of what we are allowed to ask and push for and require with them. So things like this, I'm just gonna put on
Well,
the
I
list to
didn't-
touch base with him.
I didn't ask her. She volunteered that information.
Oh, no, I understand. No, I understand.
But what I'm saying is that somebody's been kind of sweeping that under the rug. It's the first time I've ever heard that time frame mentioned. And so, but she was like, oh, no, we plan on running this thing for 75 to 100 years. Exactly what she said. And I'm like, really? We didn't know anything about that. And so if it's a big stinking mess, you know, in my opinion, it goes away in 30 years. I'm not figuring on having to deal with this for 100 years. I won't be dealing with it, but my grandkids might be, or, you know, your great grandkids for that matter. And so I think that's unacceptable, especially since we've been kind of misled all along that it's going to be a 30-year project and then it's gone. I'm just letting y'all know what was was told to me. I'm just passing that along.
It's crazy.
So I think we do need to put a time limit.
Let me see that, solar.
I think we do need to put a time limit on it that they can't just run it indefinitely. We need to be able, it needs to come back to the county. And we can then say, this is something we don't like, it's been too many problems. Or we can say, yeah, it's been great for the county, keep it going, you know,
Like a renewal, at least have a renewal.
have a renewal period. Yes, it is absolutely.
It's crazy to think in 30 years, it'll be 2052, halfway through the century.
And we'll have a nuclear war from Russia before
Yeah.
then.
Might have better, probably gonna have better stuff, hopefully. We'll have better stuff.
Yeah, hopefully, you know. But Joanne told me their plan is already replacing them every 20 years. And keeping them going.
What inside knowledge does she have over there working the torch?
Yeah, I mean, that's who they're renting the land
I
from.
mean, she's
She's the landowner.
signing the lease.
Right, right. Mhm.
So I'm sure they discussed in depth what their long range plan is, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Okay, so the lease terms okay,
I think it ought to have at least term on it.
okay.
Do you remember what the lease terms are on the two over on Genocide?
I do not. I don't know that we ever saw that because things have progressed so much since that one was approved in 2020, like citing agreements weren't even a thing then.
I
So
think
don't
it's
know.
20 years and you can add 20 years to it.
One-
Don't, on 5-year increments, but don't hold me to.
That is similar to what we did with Dominion for the old landfill sites, the brownfield. That's a
Don't hold me
similar-
to that, but if I'm not mistaken, it's in 5 years
That's the one,
increments after that.
when you did.
No, that's the one I actually got that yesterday in Greensville County.
Okay.
Oh, from
Thank you.
Greenville.
Yeah, I talked to those guys down there too. If I can, on this Greensville thing, cause I read through all that and they had some pretty good stuff. Let me run through the things that I picked out that I thought were kind of important.
Yeah.
And then then y'all can kick them out or
How
whatever.
many do they have down in Greenville?
Huh?
Do they have any
He told me they had about 5,000 acres now.
in Greenville?
He said, under construction. I said, how many have you got operational? He said, one. So they're
Kind of like.
apparently they're having some issues with that one too. And so, all right, as I read through this stuff, I got down and y'all can read it on your spare time and see how much, but one of the things that I liked is looking under the first page here under F, 424.3F, says the total size of the utility scale solar project shall be less than 1,000 acres and no more than 75% PV panel coverage. Which Torch does fall in that category, but I'm just, in other words, no more than 750 acres. It's going to be under panels.
And
what
before
they're saying.
two got here, we did look up Greensville County just to compare how big they were in land mass compared to us. They're, what was it, about 80 square miles smaller than us.
All of it.
I thought they were about.
So they're a bit smaller than us, just for.
That's it, not
comparison,
much,
so you
yeah.
know what-
Yeah, it's that much, that's much difference, yeah.
And then it's the next one, I didn't highlight, but says it must be located within 1 mile of existing transmission line or distribution line. And y'all can, think about that as you please, but I liked H. It says utility solar projects should not be located within 1.5 miles of each other, of another approved utility solar project. So we don't stack them up and put them back to back.
Mhm.
On the next page, I really liked I. It says maximum total acreage of land in Greensville County, which may be used for utility scale solar facilities. They got 7,600 acres. Now, you can say it whatever you want, but I do like the number of acres because he told me, he said, we got about 5,000 acres under construction or built right now. He said, when they reach 7,600, that's it. Next cut off. No more solar farms, period. Don't even put in an application. We're not going to even consider it. So I kind of like putting that maximum acreage in the county in there. I really like that
Other
one.
counties do that as well.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't either, but
They count 3%.
Now, I did hear that
That
Rock,
was equivalent to 3% of their land mass.
I don't know what the percentage of their land mass is.
So
but I think Rockingham County, if I'm not mistaken, I talked to a guy up there and they're specified in certain areas of Rockingham County because they got all them Amish and all, but, theirs was locked in a certain number of acres. But I can't recall.
per
Rockingham-
project or for the whole county?
For the whole county.
For the whole county, okay, so maybe not
And-
as well.
But I'm not,
Let me-
don't hold me to that as to what it was, or what it is.
I'll see if I can try and find it like.
Well, and then when you get on down to the next page, halfway down, talking about decommissioning plan. The first one is the anticipated life of the project. And see, I think that's where they kind of slid that under the wire on us about the 75 to 100-year thing. Not sure we shouldn't put something like that in there. And then it talks about at the end of that, under number 6, then at the end, it says the cost estimate should be recalculated over 5 years, but the surety shall be updated accordingly. And so, and I asked that guy, I said, well, these guys up here don't want to put a bond on it for the first 5 years. He said, oh, absolutely not. He said, they're going to bond it in Greensville County from day one, or they're not going to get it. And I think I think we need to be very clear on that. They talk
Bond from day one.
from day one. And he said that's what they do in Greensville County. He said they have to have a bond on it the entire time while it's under construction, while it's built.
Wonder how many different solar companies they have
Okay, so
working in it.
I don't know.
Rockingham put a cap of 1,800 acres per project.
Per project.
Ooh,
Yes, 1,800 acres for large solar energy facilities that require special use permits. And a cap of 50 acres for large solar facilities for certain zoning districts. But I'm trying to see if they have an overall. And their setbacks are 150 from property lines, by the way.
Don't bother going that way.
All right. If you get on down in this thing on the next page to 24-5, neighborhood meeting, I really like that part. The public meeting shall be held prior to the public hearing with the planning commission to give the community the opportunity to hear from the applicant and ask questions regarding the proposed project. That could substantially reduce our public hearings that we have in the planning commission if we required them to do that. Like a town hall meeting or something like that.
Well, didn't they hold?
Yeah, they had two.
Did they?
They had two.
Okay.
They held them here.
But were they required to do that?
No,
I'm not sure.
strongly suggest it because the apartment complex, they did the same thing.
Okay. I mean, I think we should put that in there as a requirement, you know? That way that's going to get a lot of questions answered. And then they'll either make people real happy or they'll really be mad when they come to see us.
Mhm.
Yep, that's right.
And then I see,
When they held town hall, who's required to be there? Just them and the
Them.
public, or there's no video of it, or?
Just information.
it's information to the public.
Or
They
they-
did have a WebEx for theirs, that if anybody couldn't make it in person, they did set up a meeting. Actually, I think I'm the one who set it up and they just shared it if anybody couldn't make it. I don't think they had a big turnout, but
And then on the next page under D, it's talking about they got a maximum height of primary structures, accessory structures, 15 feet is measured from the finished grade. I mean, I don't know if we cover, I know we had some stuff in ours about the height of the panels, but I don't know about the accessory structures, and I don't know that that's not a deal breaker either way. Under H, on down at the bottom, and this is something I expressed concern about, the applicant should identify access corridors for wildlife to navigate through the solar facility. That was the thing that the Wildlife Federation, their big concern of theirs too. And I think if they left channels in there, I think in the one I wrote up, I had put down each section would have no more than 100 acres without some sort of a corridor for wildlife to traverse the property. It'll help keep the animals out of their fenced area. If an animal runs up to something that's got 300 or 400 acres fenced in, the deer's going to jump it. They're not going to walk around it. And so I think you need to.
With the fence, you got deer.
They're gonna track it.
do you think
Yeah.
that the gaps in the fence that they're gonna have wouldn't solve this issue?
No, because if you look at it, the only gap they've got is where they can't go anyway because it's a stream.
Yeah.
It's a wetland.
Mhm.
But it's like 300 and 400 acres in each section. I mean, it's a pretty big fenced in area.
300 acres in one track. I can't imagine a field that big myself.
But they're not going to want to do that because it's going to be additional cost for the fencing. But the wildlife folks, all the websites I looked at, wildlife versus solar, they all recommended corridors for the wildlife to be able to transverse back and forth.
You know, I kind of like the corridors, because that is in deer hunting.
Width.
Yeah,
And the deer go going in, but it may keep the dogs from going in there.
yeah.
And then people got to call, go in there and get the dogs.
Should
And
it
that's
have
a good point.
should it have a width on it? That's what I'm saying.
During the
Corridor,
weather.
you don't want 16 foot.
I think it ought to be at least 50 feet. Somewhere in one of these, I read something about that and it said 50 feet, or maybe I saw it on a website online or something.
Because I mean, if you just have a corridor, they could have
That's a little
16
teeny.
foot road.
Yeah,
As far as I'm concerned, they could put a road in that corridor as long as the animals aren't fenced out.
I-
No.
I don't know if it needs to be 50 feet, but I would definitely, I believe I would go at least with
30 feet.
30 or 25
5
feet
feet.
corridor.
Right.
I mean, I'd like to get, as long as it's a corridor.
You want to make it big enough that the animals can find it, you
You
know?
wanna make it big enough that you get something in there that's a boss, that'll make it by.
And see, I would prefer
I mean,
actually.
you take like a coyote, get behind, or, Cody, get behind deer or something.
Stampede of them.
Personally, I would prefer that they would leave a 50-foot strip and put up a road in that strip to give us access with the fire department in case they do get a fire or something. We have a big brush fire on 1,000 acres. We need to be able to get access in there somehow.
Pretty good.
It's all fenced in. Of course, I got bolt cutters. I can get in,
I think,
but at the same time, I don't want to have to do that.
Believe you.
I think we could probably sell that better than a hunting dog. The hunting dog also is important, but we need to have fire trucks for vegetation fire.
A road big enough that you can get fire trucks in, or big fire trucks in there, not just brush trucks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Let me see, there's a couple other things. If you go to the next page where it says page 24-6 at the top. It talks about the insurance on M right there. It says the applicant should provide proof of adequate liability insurance for the solar facility prior to the beginning of construction.
Which one you,
M,
oh, him.
24-6.
Yeah, I got it. I see.
You know, that they need to make sure they need to provide proof to us that they have insurance. And then when you get down to the next section, talk about decommissioning under A. Solar facilities which have reached the end of their useful life and or have not been in active and continuous service for a period of 1 year shall be removed at the owner or operator's expense. And except if the project's being repowered or being refurbished or whatever, but if it's set stagnant for a year and nobody's touched it, it needs to be pulled out. I kind of like that in there too.
I didn't catch that.
In other words, if it's been stagnant for over a year,
Oh, yeah.
then it needs to be canceled and taken away. And we might be able to put that thing, if we're going to use this like a temporary zoning,
I think we already have that in our ordinance.
do you?
Yeah. Where did I just see that? Or maybe I just read it in someone else's, okay, maybe it was just that I read it in.
And then if you look at the next page, 24-7, under number 4, says the owner or occupant shall recalculate the estimated cost of decommissioning every 5 years. If you recalculate the estimate cost of decommissioning exceeds the original estimated cost of decommissioning by 10%, then the owner or occupant shall deposit additional funds into an escrow account to meet the new cost estimate. In other words, if they either that or they got to increase their bond.
Yeah.
I thought when they renewed the bond every 5 years, that would take care of that. Am I missing something?
It should, but the problem is what you gotta look for is
How you
they
bond.
renew the bond today for what they think the value of it is. What's the value gonna be 5 years from now? If it goes kaput in 4.5 years, are we gonna be on the hook for $100,000 more than what the bond covers? You see what I'm saying? That's what you gotta look out for.
Especially with inflation as it is now.
Oh, yeah, I mean, how do you even calculate it today, the way the inflation's been over the last 6 months?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really,
Would you know that? Say you're at the end of it, you get into the 25 years, so you've had
4.
4 resets of the bond.
Golly.
Would that,
my opinion is the bond should be based on the estimated cost that it's gonna be 5 years from now. If you go ahead and figure your inflation in, or your cost of living or whatever, and we say the decommissioning today is $10,500,000. But we think in 5 years, it's gonna be $12 million, then they need to take the bond out for $12 million to cover the next 5 years. You see what I'm saying? They need to look ahead. Are we gonna get stuck holding an empty sack at the end if it goes out in 4.5 years?
Be like an accelerated bond.
Right, something like that. That's the way I think the bond should work. Is it, they could take it out today based on today's value. They go under 4.5 years and then all of a sudden the bond doesn't cover it. Who's on the hook for it? The bond should always be estimated 5 years in advance.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you, David?
Mm-hmm.
That, my biggest thing is the bond and some surety or insurance that we're not gonna get stuck, not making much money off of it, get stuck with a big bill. at
And the
end.
county gotta pay.
Question I've had, I haven't figured out yet, haven't got an answer. Does, Joanne, they have any teeth in it on their end?
What do you mean, as far as what they're gonna make?
No, if they up and leave, why isn't it Joanne's responsibility to clean the sucker up? Why is it the county's? It's her land, not the county's land.
That's true.
See, we don't know what they got. Understand what I'm,
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
That's an idea. You know, if we can,
that's what I mean. What I'm saying is it our responsibility? I mean, it's just like the house on the corner there, you know, I don't know how many times people complained about it. But you know, is it the county's responsibility to clean that up or the
No,
landowner's responsibility to clean it up?
should be the landowners, but then you gotta have some rule in place to force them to be able to do it.
That's what I'm gonna say. That's gonna be your problem.
And I noticed a lot of this stuff in here, it says, you've got stipulate says the leasee or the owner.
Owner.
So they're kind of putting it on both of
Fuck
them
'em.
by doing it like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know how big business operates because one of the things that I had an argument with somebody about,
But I mean,
it's like.
that ought to be a concern of, you know, L.O. Scott.
Right. I mean,
L.O. Scott just gonna put trees back into it, so it don't matter if it's concrete, anything in there, you can put a tree right next to it.
not according to this thing. This thing says in one place in the decommissioning plan, it says it will be put back in pre-construction condition, which is now trees. And paragraph down, it says it will be left in a metal-like condition when they're
You
finished.
know, like, yeah, I heard the metal light.
And that needs to be put back in trees. If that's what they took out, in my opinion. But if you say you can put it
Well,
back in pre-condition.
well,
Condition,
they
put it
could-
back in
It
pre-condition.
could go back to whatever the web of them or L.O. Scott wants.
They're tree people, you know what they want. They're gonna want trees, I would think.
But I'd say either that or they're gonna put houses on it.
Nobody wants a house in the middle of a 1,000-acre field either.
Well, they cut it.
You know?
I can go either way on the precondition because either they put trees back on it or
Or
they
metal.
just had land cleared.
Clear.
Gotta wait.
They
They gotta wait for a long time before they can farm it. You know, I can go either way on that. I mean, I can see
Well,
both sides.
And my opinion, like I said, the bond needs to be renewed every 5 years and needs to be estimated on what it's gonna cost 5 years from now. That's my opinion. That's the only way we're guaranteed to be covered. And then if the cost of living skyrockets, you're still not gonna be covered, but at least you'll cover a big chunk of it. That's kind of the way I'm looking.
Pretty much, it made whatever you made in the, you know, you had that'll help too.
And for those of you who don't understand, a bond is nothing more than an insurance policy.
Policy.
Saying that, I mean, if you got a $12 million bond,
Mhm.
it doesn't cost them $12 million.
I don't know.
You're paying a small percentage of that to have that insurance policy saying that'll be of course, the bond people, the insurance company hopes they never have to pay off. You know, I mean, that's the way regular insurance
Well,
works.
just like life insurance.
I was gonna say, that's it.
Well, life insurance, sooner or later, they're gonna pay. Everybody dies sooner or later. And then on the back, and I don't know if this means anything. If you go down to conditions under number 4, the applicant shall pay supplemental application fees cover the reasonable or an actual cost of any review of erosion control plans or stormwater plan, but they have to pay for that now anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they already have to do that.
It might not be covered as, does the county have responsibility for monitoring?
Mhm.
So
That's to the
So some-
environmental department. So yeah,
some county employee
yeah.
is spending money, I mean, county's spending money on somebody to go by and check it.
Yes, unless, and we had discussed this when the project was well, internally, not at planning commission. It could be made a condition, that they have to get a third party person just due to the size, because we have one person that does erosion and sediment control. But we are getting a part-time person started, or we are getting a full-time person starting in January who will also do that. So we do have the capacity to do it, but if we continue to get projects, we will quickly run out of capacity.
Right, and that's what Greensville's got they got that one guy, that's all he deals with is solar stuff.
Well, I have to.
Anyway, the last thing I got, if you look under 6, says that the solar facility is declared to be unsafe by the zoning administrator or the building official. The facility must be in compliance within 14 days or the supplemental use permit shall be terminated and the system removed from the property. I kind of like that. In other words, if something's wrong, they got to fix it now. They can't wait next month or 2 months or 6 months to fix it. That's why.
I like that. The only thing I would want some kind of definition for unsafe.
Yeah, you'd have.
That's a little bit.
Hey,
I would say
subjective to-
any condition is unsafe to the public or the environment. Period. Sometimes gray areas work in your favor.
Frequently, actually.
You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah, that's.
I mean, it's something that unsafe, if you say unsafe to the environment, that covers streams runoff, it covers any sort of wildfires, it would harm the woods. I mean, it covers a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But,
Okay,
and that was, like I said, I know y'all didn't have the Greensville one,
Mhm.
and I wanted to bring, because I read through it and I thought they had some pretty good stuff, and I wanted to bring the things I thought seemed kind of important up to your attention, and that was, now I'll shut up for a while.
no, thank you for bringing that.
yeah, good stuff. Good look out.
David, do you have thoughts?
I do. I made a note right here on your setbacks.
All right,
For
what-
Greenfield?
Well,
What page you're on?
I'm just
Oh,
going
really?
by what Roy went on. He mentioned the
All right, wait a
setbacks.
minute. Which one? F?
Where you at?
On
First page?
yeah, I'm on the first page on F.
Mhm.
It was actually the thousand, may not, but I got setbacks right here. What I'm getting at. Torch has already established 1,000 feet setback.
Mhm.
They've already established that. And then if I get my numbers right, it's 1,200 feet from a residence.
Mhm.
It's 1,000 feet from a property.
From property line.
We didn't set that. They come in here and set that.
To kind of sets a standard, doesn't it?
That's kind of what I'm thinking. But we would have to, that would only be on large scale.
That's a good point. If we could break it up based on acreage, if you're X or over, it's
Yeah.
gotta be this amount.
Well,
Go ahead. I don't want to take your thunder. You-
No,
If you look at the thing that I wrote up, I got something similar to that on the large scale, 800 or 1,000 feet. And then I reduced it. I don't remember what it was.
800.
Reduced from 1,000 to 800 for small scale or something. But I know I cut them back for the small scale.
Mhm.
And so,
Travis said something a minute ago when you were talking about the property values. If it's further away from the property line.
Yeah.
It shouldn't affect the property values.
For the shed, yeah, right.
I wouldn't budge on that. That's what they are.
here's the mine. I got,
Something that could also help, I mean, if the view shed is a big sticking point, which it seems like it is, we're only requiring a 25-foot buffer. 25 feet on 1,000-acre parcel, that's nothing.
no.
So we could, if we decide we want to do 1,000-foot setback from residences
Right.
or property lines or whatever, maybe increasing that buffer as well. Because on some of these flat fields, it
You
doesn't
can
matter if it's 1,200 feet.
Yeah, you can see.
If it's flat enough, I can see it 1,200 feet away.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe increasing the buffer as well.
And see, the thing that I wrote up for the small ones, I had 500 feet from any streets or joining boundary lines. And for the big ones, I had 800 feet from all streets and joining boundary lines. But you can make that bigger if you wanted to.
I like,
No, go ahead.
I like the 1,000 on the big one. You've been in real estate. What is that? Does that help property values?
Yeah, definitely. It's all about the view shed. If you can't see it, then I really don't think it has that.
Much
Big impact.
Impact.
See, from my house, it
Yeah.
doesn't count
Can't
then.
hear it, can't smell it, can't see it.
And in the rare case of a field, we're gonna probably get to that too. You can't plant trees enough to cover that. But if you say this one currently, for instance, you got trees or cut over within that 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
Right.
But see, that's what, if you look at the one that I wrote up there, it says screening shall be in the form of a minimum of 100 feet vegetative buffer with the height sufficient to screen the project from public streets and adjoining property owners.
It's go hard, depending on what the topography is, you won't totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, if they got a 25-foot limit and I got a 80-foot tree there, it's probably gonna cover Right in the hills, they're not gonna.
But you take one in
The 80-foot tree won't grow before the solar panels.
My point is now you need to look for wooded areas that already have 80-foot trees.
Well, then maybe the stipulation shouldn't be that specific. It should just be that the project cannot be viewed from a public right of way or an adjoining residence. And
I'm fine with
you
that.
have a bunch, if you're down in a dip and we can't see it, then boom, you don't have to plant a single tree if you don't want to. But if you're in the middle of a field and you've got to plant 10,000 trees, then that's a you problem.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I think
That sounds good.
The public road and residents can't see it.
right.
Cause I mean, you haven't been by Frankie since he said it.
I've been by when it was construction in, but haven't been by there.
You know, he's probably, 5,000 feet.
Yeah, they're way off the road back
You can
there.
see it.
And that one, I don't see any causing, but the one on Genito,
Well, yeah,
it's not.
that's open field. That's an open field.
Right.
Luckily, they left the trees on the road.
But don't they have to have a vegetative buffer around that too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they will by the
In
time,
front of
yes. The 25 feet all the way around outside of the fence.
Yeah, I think if you write that up saying it can't be viewed by any residents. Now, that don't mean that some guy next door, if he says, I don't like it, I'm gonna build a 80-foot tower, so now I can see it,
Yeah.
then that doesn't count. I mean, that's being unreasonable.
And I think it also probably wouldn't matter. Say Joanne Webb lived on one of the parcels. I think if it's the owner, that doesn't concern me as much.
It doesn't concern me either.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, you can always say if the owner lives on the property or the owner or the leaser, or however how you want to word it,
Yeah.
lives on the property, these restrictions should be waived or something.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, if they want to look at it in their backyard, it's up to them.
So are we gonna go with the 1,000 feet setbacks on the bigger sites?
I say yes.
So what if
At
we
least
do
that.
bigger sites, all utility scale? Because we have them split up into like utility scale, residential, and maybe like small commercial, which I don't think we've ever had. Or is there like a particular acreage?
We got one, well, we don't have one, but we got one in the process. I'm gonna say, they offered it, we ought to stick with what they said,
For all utility scale.
utility
Mhm.
scale, and I would almost fall back, it still gets me that they call them a farm.
No, they're sold.
And-
Okay, so
A poultry farm is 300 feet from the property line. So I wouldn't go any lower than that.
So you think on the small scale, it ought to be 300 feet then?
I'm thinking,
At least,
My only thing I want to bring up with the small scale, just, and I didn't bring my ordinance, but our small scale is incredibly small. Like, you could get this to power your garage. So that's the only thing. If I'm just gonna put up 2 panels in my yard when I only live on 2 acres, is it feasible for me to do the 300, even though it's 2
No,
panels to run my?
Well,
I'm not talking homeowners, I'm thinking,
Okay, so
I'm thinking
anything.
Genito and over by. your
Okay,
way.
so those are all utility scale. So if anything 15 megawatts and up, you think should have the 1,000 feet
Definitely.
setback? That's fine.
How big- how big is the one on
I just want to
Jimco?
make sure I'm clear.
How many megawatts is it?
I don't know the wattage. It's about 75 acres though.
I thought it was 5 megawatts. When-
I didn't think it-
It's gotta be more than
That sticks in my
5
head
because
somewhere.
5 wouldn't require a special exception.
I
rate.
think
Let me
it's
get
15.
Hold on.
If you look at this Greensville thing, they address home
I think they were 10.
solar panels too in
I
there.
think they were 10,
Sounds.
because if they'd have went, I remember talking about if they'd have got to 20,
Oh,
then we could have taxed under the machinery tax for the personal property.
Another thing they said in here, utility scale solar facilities, 5 megawatts or less are not allowed in any zoning district throughout the county. In other words, they're not gonna put up a little bunch of little 25 acre ones, basically what you're saying.
Hmm.
25, 50 acres, they're not gonna allow those at all. Either you're gonna go big or you're not gonna go at all.
and how is our tax with that, with,
It says you're only allowed in the A1 district too, agricultural district.
with they, like I said, they're not gonna get taxed as an agricultural, but they say they can call it whatever they want to call it, but long we not, we're gonna charge them more, I would assume.
I would think it would be a tax assessed at industrial property.
Right.
It's the industrial property rate.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but your tax rate gonna be,
It ain't residential.
it's not
agricultural.
it's not gonna be agricultural
No.
taxes. That's another thing I'm thinking from
It's
that.
not a
perspective.
business district because you don't have business coming and going. It's almost got to be like an M1 or M2 or if we create an industrial utility zoning, I mean, it's,
Cause you're capturing energy to sell it to the
Right, it's,
So-
it's an industry.
Is in, you know,
I
it's,
think you could tax it on the machinery side. And then you can also tax it on the output of the project.
project.
So whatever, how much current they sell,
Mm-hmm.
we tax that. There's two ways to tax that.
Well,
A lot
really,
of that was done in closed session. I can't
Yeah, you can't get it, yeah.
say much more than that, but
But I was just wondering, for the county's perspective, if they call it a solar farm, as long, they can call it whatever they want to call it, but as long as we not gonna be allowing them to be taxed in a farm, you know, like as a farm would be, or, you know, that's good.
Right. right.
Yeah.
Well, and the amount that we county's getting out of this is really rubs me wrong for what we're having to deal with. And you misquoted me in that, Wayne, and you put in the paper. You said that I said that what they were going to pay per year was the same thing as the landfill. I didn't say that. I said that's what they're going to pay per year is basically the same thing the landfill pays per month. Big difference in the way that was worded,
Tipping fees.
in the tipping fees.
do you think those setbacks are too much? I mean, you're right over every side one. I just.
Doesn't bother me one way or the other. I'd rather have that than a house. Myself, but I think if you start out at 1,000, 1,200 feet from property line
And from the roads.
and from a road, I think you would have cleared up a lot of this
Confusion we having.
Right.
stuff we had over in that area because they were coming so close. 100 feet.
But I think
300 feet's not really that long.
No,
I agree with David. If you got to build a chicken house or poultry house 300 feet off the property line, you ought to have to do a small scale solar farm the same way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with that.
but like anything, if it's no trees to start with, it's gonna be years before.
Anything, yeah.
I mean, pine's gonna be the fastest growing, but what?
Pines and
Leland
poppers.
cypress.
Or sweet
Leland
gums.
cypress.
You know how
trees.
fields are sweet. You don't farm a field one year, it's full of sweet gums, the next year, you know. This thing grows everywhere.
But they ain't good for nothing. What?
if we settle on the setbacks,
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Utility scale. Okay, so kind of just a procedural question, and David, I guess this is mainly directed at you. But I want y'all's feedback as well. For this, so what do you think makes the most sense? This project is, over a year with both submissions. I think it was March of 2021 that we first started. We got something for them. Do we if you all choose to approve them, do we just put these additional conditions on it as far as the setbacks? Can't be visible from the public road or adjoining properties, these kind of things, put those on as conditions when the board votes? And then update the ordinance so that these next two that are coming this summer will have to go with the new ordinance? Or do we want to put Torch on hold until we've written the ordinance? Because these ordinance, we cannot get the ordinance done in any less than 60 to 90 days.
I honestly
And
think
we're
it should
already
be
a
put
year
on hold
deep in
until the
this
ordinance
thing.
goes into effect and then they have to meet those rules.
Torch.
I think that's a fair thing to do to them and the adjoining landowners, I think.
My only concern with that is that they did apply so long ago and have already been to the planning commission twice. And I don't disagree with the decision that was made, but we did a year later say, oh, now we want to go to the zoning committee. Hold tight.
We should have done it after the last one was approved. Really should.
So I just need direction of where we go from this meeting, how we want to proceed.
Well, the thing would be is to see what things we put in, see how close they are to them. Because they've done a whole lot.
A lot of these,
To
I think,
clean their act
they
up.
meet, honestly.
They did.
And if they're pretty damn burn close.
Yeah.
They've been working with us for a year. And cleaning most of it up.
and we're kind of using them as an example too.
Yeah, they meet pretty much all of
in their
this.
setback.
What I'm
Yeah.
saying, I'd say whatever they say, plus or minus, you might add a few things, but I don't think far as can't see from the road at now. They pretty much cleaned that up as a whole.
Yeah, and you cannot see it from the road at all. I'm not sure if any of the homes, the one that's 1,400 feet away, I'm not sure if they'll be able to see based on the buffer.
But I'm saying, they've bent over back to get as close to what we wanted as possible, so I can't see pushing them off.
How about,
But I think anybody else,
They got them. We
they
had
gonna
to
have to lock in pretty
Sure.
quick. We're not gonna fiddle around with you partner.
how about if something, if we're gonna add something to the thing and instead of waiting for it to be approved, just say, this is what we're looking at in the future, and our zoning ordinance, if you're willing to proffer that now, then you can go ahead and move forward. Make them proffer the change that we're gonna request.
Board could do that. So we're gonna hold the public hearing. Whether you vote or whether you don't vote, y'all could give that direction to add these conditions or coming from this. And they actually did email me on Monday because they wanted to add several more conditions to themselves before the board meeting. So I have not seen those yet. I told them I need them by Monday at noon. Just for informational, I'll of course send them to you all.
Well, they're scrambling.
They're gonna add, yeah, they're throwing
looking
in
at-
some additional conditions for themselves. So I haven't seen those yet unless they've sent them.
I was telling Roy if we all come here, this is David, this ain't District 1, this is the David. I'd like to see some of the ones we got completed before we go any further, getting more here.
Oh,
We really don't. We
you
don't
don't wanna
have,
be like Greenville, got 5,000 acres and
And then you
haven't got
add
one
up.
running.
yeah,
Right.
and then we're stuck. We can't make these changes. I mean, we may get Genito up and running, brackets in, and say, we need to make a few changes. We don't know that right now, so.
Right. That's what got me about this thing is this thing was like, we approved a couple of small ones that aren't up and running yet. And then this huge one comes in. I mean.
And then you got two more
supposedly
huge
there's
ones.
And they-
little ones, you
They're
know?
not huge by any means, the other two.
Right.
They are slightly larger than the two that we have now, but nowhere near the magnitude of the Torch project, but they're projects nonetheless. And they're planning to come in July.
So you plan on, what you thinking, just to hold off on the rest of, like, get these up and run, get this up and running?
Person on the board.
No, but just in general,
If I had to push something, I would say, let's
wait.
step back, see how this one does, if this one gets passed. And we got the other two.
Let's
Let's
put them on
think-
hold until you see.
Let's see what the
what's going on.
finished project, I mean, we would lose a year.
The
Okay, so
one
I'll
on-
have to ask Jeff about the process for that. But, okay, so what I hear you saying, you feel comfortable moving forward with this one if we can beef up the conditions, if it were to get approved, we would beef up the conditions.
Well, we'll see what
And then maybe take a
conditions they're
break
not
there.
meeting that we would put on.
And see what they're about to propose.
And
Okay.
then see if,
Okay,
you know, might be able to work with those for their own.
Anything that we require, I've been telling you, let's say we want to put a bond on it from day one, I am going to absolutely be a.
But I'm saying, yeah, if that's one thing, we could do that. That would be one.
And that was one of the things, like I said, when I talked to that guy from Greensville, I said, well, these guys don't want to bond it for the first 5 years. He said, oh, no, they're going to bond it before they turn over the first shovel full of dirt in our county.
Is there any way to ask other localities what our average bond is per acre?
we
So-
can, actually, Lunenburg today told me this was for this wasn't the bond, this was their siting agreement. They have a standard 25,000 per acre.
Okay. Okay, that gives us
Yeah, because I would have no frame of reference, but yes, they do 25,000 an acre in
so
Lunenburg.
what's 25 times 7,
700 and.
Oh,
600, whatever. it is.
Million.
All right, I think it was like 650, so 25,000.
But that's not what they're paying for the bond. They just carry that much bond.
So that's 16.2 million.
Okay. That'll probably cost them a couple $100,000 a year.
If that.
Drop in the bucket compared to what they're going to make.
Okay. Did you want to talk about locations? We hadn't talked about that yet.
That didn't seem like that was a big sticking point for y'all, but, we already have it in there that it cannot be within a mile of the village. And that it can only be 3% of land cover in a 5-mile radius. So that was mainly what I was referring to about the location, but I guess putting a cap on total acreage would maybe fall under that, if that's something the board wants to consider.
And the Greenville 7,600 you mentioned
70, yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
That worked out to be 4% of the county of Greenville. North.
4% of the county.
Man.
Okay,
So if we leave it at 3% within a 5-mile area, That's actually less.
It's less and you're not.
No, not really. It's not less. He's talking about 4% of the entire county.
County.
We're talking about 3% of a 5 mile area. No, that's not, that's gonna be more, a lot more.
But the only place they can put it is on where they can get the power lines.
I think when I calculated it, that 3% of land cover in a 5 mile radius was about 1,800-ish acres, because Torch's first proposal was really, really pushing it
But
close.
you're talking about 1,800 acres in a 5 mile area. This county is much larger than 5 miles.
No, exactly. Yes, yes. I'm just saying what we currently have, that 5 mile radius, you can only cover about 1,700 to 1,800 acres.
I kind of liked the acres limit. I mean, that puts,
That puts a limit on it.
That's the limit.
If anything, exactly, it gives us an end game.
You can always change it later if you wanted to.
That's true.
What kind of acreage y'all think is reasonable?
I don't hate using 3 or 5%.
All right, what's,
what is 3% of the county?
yeah, what's 3 miles in county, acres in county, you know? Is it on there?
Hold on one second. I can go, oh, are you Googling?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could use the 3% countywide and keep the thing about they gotta be a mile and a half apart or 2 miles apart or whatever. That would spread them out.
The 1,000 feet setbacks probably gonna help us
Oh, absolutely.
in the open land and field cover.
For sure. And it'll bump out a lot of parcels as well, because if we had the 1,000-foot setback, I don't know that the 2 that were already approved,
Would have been.
I don't know how big those parcels were to start with. I don't know if they would have been able to make that work. So you could weed out a lot just by that in general.
The county is 359 square miles according to Wikipedia, and that works out to be
Okay,
almost 230,000 acres, 230,000
all
acres.
right, what's 3% of that? 8,000. That's gonna be about 9,000 acres.
You said 3%?
Yeah, it's gonna be about 9,000 acres roughly.
It's gonna be pretty much close to Greenville.
I got almost 7,000.
Almost 7,000, okay.
All right.
800.
It's only 200,000 times 3, it'd be
Wow.
6,000
So if it's-
plus the
Is that-
300.
Okay, so some kind of acreage limit based on a person.
Is that?
How close to 7,000 are you?
Or is that,
So right now, ours says 5% of land cover, and that does include buffers and fenced-in area.
He said it comes out to 6,892.
Okay, so
So we
seven.
could say 7,000 acres total.
Mhm.
So how does that work out if, oh, they did 4%? Was that based on 3% or 5%?
That's 4%.
Almost 7,000 was,
His
Was 3%? Okay, because that didn't make
6,800 was
sense.
3%.
Okay,
So if we went to 7,000, it'd be like 3.5%.
okay,
3.1.
okay.
What do y'all think?
You know, like, you always
Like-
raise it.
I would do it odd.
I see.
That still gives us
6,000.
a ton of solar to grow
Yes.
into. If we've only got a couple hundred acres now plus 600, we're not even at 1,000 acres yet. That's a lot of solar.
Should we reduce it to 5,000 acres?
I'm just thinking about it now. That kind of is starting to seem like a lot, because these other 2 are about 300 and then 150. So that's just gonna get us over 1,000 acres.
if it's under, if we calculating the acres under panels, or we calculating the acres on the whole project?
It fenced in, so everything fenced
Well,
in.
that was 1,100.
Well, the way Greensville's got it written up says the maximum number of acres of land in Greensville County, which may be used for utility scale solar facilities.
50.
I would say that's everything that they're leasing, whether it's inside the fence or not.
Not, yeah.
Started out with 1,100.
Yeah, they did start out with 1,100, but it only includes, so it wouldn't include the full 1,100 acres. It's just the fenced in portion. So if they're doing 650,
But see, the way this thing is written up, in Greensville, it says the maximum total acres of land in Greensville County, which may be used for utility scale solar facilities, shall be 7,600 acres. In my opinion, that's the entire lease, whatever they're leasing.
That's how I interpret it.
That's kind of the way I see it. So
no, I don't disagree. That makes a lot more sense. I'm just going based, so what we currently say for the density is, for the purpose of calculating density, the project area for utility scale solar shall consist of the fenced-in area and required landscape buffer. So only that 25-foot buffer in.
Well,
But
that's-
I don't disagree with making it the entire parcel.
What do y'all think?
I think if we're gonna put a limit up in the upwards of 7,000
Make it the entire lease property?
entirely.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think that's
I
on,
think
Okay.
so
Because
too.
if this
Agree.
person,
Because 7,000 is a lot of acres.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, if you're gonna say just the fenced in area, I'm thinking 3,500, 4,000, but now if you're gonna include all of it, then 7,000 is reasonable, I think.
Well, the thing is, what's not fenced in is unusable.
Right, it's part of the solar facility.
Part of the solar facility,
Mhm.
Part of the lease.
Not being, yeah.
Yeah.
just the same way
So use
if you
entire
put the
parcel.
trails through it,
Right,
Okay.
right, that's still part of the lease.
part of the lease.
Agree.
Yeah, I absolutely do.
I agree with that.
did we talk about your decommissioning?
Well,
Yes.
well, before we get to that, the buffer.
Mhm.
What did you, right now, ours says 25-foot buffer.
Right, so I think.
think we
where
need to increase that.
landed was not putting a set buffer and just putting that
Setbacks.
you cannot see it from the public road and you.
Okay, that's right, that's right. We did talk about, okay, I'm good with that.
Feel good with that, or do you
Yeah.
want to keep the 25-foot buffer in no matter what?
No, if it's not visible from property owners, the land, adjoining landowners or the road, I think that's gonna cover it right there.
David, what are your thoughts? I see
But-
the wheels turning.
Well, I think,
If they want it in the field, they're gonna have to plant a buffer.
I
Make it
know.
not, make it invisible.
But I'm saying
that.
though, is that gonna extend over 1,000 feet and not see it? Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you got a house and you're 1,000 feet setback, you probably wouldn't need a buffer, really.
If it's in the bottom or
Does
something.
it's in a-
So that's kind of what I was saying, is requiring the 25-foot buffer for something that you would never see anyways. I don't know that.
Yeah,
Well, and I think that's gonna kind of guide them more to forest land because you already got a natural buffer around it. We got setback that nobody's gonna see it.
And that'll
Well,
alleviate
somebody ain't already clear cut it.
concerns about cropland.
that's where I was going.
That's
He
possible.
just
too.
said it a whole lot better than I was
Mhm.
trying to figure out it.
Do we say anything in there about, are you not, the solar farm's not gonna be allowed on conservation easement property?
That is dependent on the conservation easement. We don't set that, just like now when properties get put in conservation easement, the conservation easement agreement with Virginia Outdoors Foundation or Ward Partner, whoever they did them with, they will set those terms of exactly what you can do. I would be very surprised if you could use a conservation easement parcel for solar. Right now, most of them, you can have a home and you can do ag, and that's it, in any ag-related structures, but that's.
My concern is there's a property owner in the northwest end of the county that put a lot of land in conservation easement to get a reduced tax rate or get some sort of, save some money.
Mhm.
If he knows there's money to be made, he'll be slapping solar farms up left and right up there. You know what I'm talking
Well, that is
about.
that is correct, but number one, I don't think they would be able to do solar on a conservation. easement.
Okay,
And number two, they would still have to do a siting agreement and pay the county buku's money.
and the county
So-
doesn't have to sign that agreement to make that change then.
That's right.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. All right, that was a question somebody asked me and I read it somewhere that they weren't allowing them.
Virginia Outdoors Foundation is probably gonna have to address that very soon.
I don't think I could even put a cell tower on my conservation easement.
Yeah, some of them are very, who is yours
Good.
through?
Virginia Outdoor.
Virginia Outdoors. Yeah, they're.
they're pretty.
Okay,
And they're real strict on.
And I didn't
kind of
know.
excavating.
I didn't know, that's why I was asking.
Okay, so according to the internet, it is a .org site, so it's maybe fairly true. Most conservation easements prohibit commercial solar facilities. You can only put solar panels on like your roof or something. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly go over what I took from this and y'all add anything that I missed. Probably need to talk to our attorney about the bond. Because our ordinance says that it is due at the beginning, but that is not the current setup we have with them, so that needs to be addressed for decommissioning. The setbacks, we want to increase those to 1,000-foot minimum. Potentially a 7,000 acre cap for the entire county. And use the entire parcel for that calculation.
Can I stop you one second?
Yeah.
When you explain the 7,000, can you explain the percentage of that is over the county?
Yes,
Can you have
we
it-
said that was a little more than
3%.
'I'd just say
Yep,
3%.
okay. And I think that'd be an easy sell because we already have that
And maybe have the numbers that Travis pulled up
Yeah,
so people can see the
for
comparison.
sure.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll put that.
Yeah, but 7,000 sounds like a lot,
But if we're
but
using that.
total
calculation-
acres in the county,
Yeah,
a whole lot of difference. If that's only 7%. Of course, a lot of them might not be able to figure, you just multiply that by,
so then
a percentage.
adding in there that the project can't be visible from the public right of way or adjoining properties. Let
That'd
me
be
see what
kind
else I wrote. I need to talk to Jeff, county attorney, to see if we're allowed to regulate the number of years in the lease. If we are allowed to require them to come back after 25 or 30 years before they
think-
renew that.
I
So
think
I'll
if we
ask
can do
him-
that, we should.
I think we should be able to do that, but I will, I'll ask him about that.
Well, if a landlord, or leasee has to review it then, I don't know why we shouldn't.
And we would have
Yeah.
to review our siding agreement too, because that only goes 30 years out.
Oh,
So it would make sense to,
Redo.
at that point, redo everything. And then last thing I had was potentially adding in, a wildlife corridor as something we would require.
Or emergency vehicle.
Yes, yeah, and I put that somewhere else.
Probably
I got notes all
It'd
over
probably be
the
some
place.
fancy word.
Okay. So does that pretty much cover the biggest concerns?
I think so.
For me.
What did we decide about the bond thing?
The bond thing I need to talk to our attorney about, because our ordinance does currently say that they have to have this decommissioning bond in before the building permit is pulled. However, our citing agreement, I don't think currently aligns with that. So we're gonna have to talk to the attorney about those things. But I'll shoot him an email tomorrow and get that all squared away.
Well, you'll never get me to support it unless they go bond it from the very beginning. I mean, I think that's important.
And you might
Okay.
ask him if you can.
Yeah.
Like the accelerated bond.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
see what he
Yes,
said.
sorry,
There's
yes,
gotta be
y'all
some
can put
term
that.
other than that, but
Yeah, I think we need to plan ahead on this bond,
Okay.
But I think the one over on 609, if I'm not mistaken, they hope to have it running.
And we already have bonds for those.
But
Decommissioning
I
bonds.
think
for those.
it's
Just so you-
supposed to be put in turn.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
did you know anything about any sort of, animal access corridors? We
That's
talk
what
about
he asked, animal access and,
Fire truck.
fire safety.
Like y'all mentioned, I'll probably really lean on the fire safety emergency access a little harder than wildlife, but I think the wildlife will speak to a lot of,
well, they can walk the same line.
there we go.
Now, the only thing may be by just saying fire, they may have a road through there, but you have to get through a gate, then go through. It won't be fenced on both sides for animals. So you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm,
They could have a road through there and you have a gate,
mhm,
one end and gate the other, end where you could get in,
mhm.
but that don't mean wildlife could get in.
Yeah,
So I asked Jeff about that.
This thing I gave you from Greensville. When under, I guess it's under decommission, and one of the things says the applicant should deposit the required amount into approved escrow account before any building permit is issued to allow construction of the solar facility. In other words, they're gonna have to put that surety up front where they're allowed to even start.
yeah, ours says that too.
No, does it? Okay.
P two, it's literally the exact same wording.
So if it's the exact same wording, how come these guys don't want to, they weren't in compliance if they weren't going to bond it for the first 5 years anyway?
Right, so that's, yes, that's part of their.
That's just something that they're
We'll have to
working
work
out
out.
with.
Yeah.
As time goes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll get all this feedback together, but in the meantime, general feels are that it's okay to put conditions on this project. Then we'll reconvene maybe after the board meets in case they bring up additional concerns and questions.
You get that on the agenda.
Agenda items are due Monday, so I haven't sent any of mine then, but it'll all be on there. Don't even worry. The ads did go out there, so it was in the paper. I lost my train of thought, but yes, after the board meeting, we'll get back together based on their feedback and have something more concrete going forward. And if projects are starting to roll it in,
By that time,
the
you'll
board will
have
have to put a
something,
pause.
attorney will It's probably not gonna be able to do that, right? It's probably gonna be a week, 10 days,
Yes.
because he's probably gonna look into a lot of different things.
But, and y'all, I mean, I'm sure you got to do something with the torch thing, but my opinion is that if anybody else comes forward wanting to submit one, you say they're on hold until.
And I need to ask Jeff the process for that because we can't just say, nope,
No.
get back in your
It's-
car. There's like a whole legal process to being able
process.
to do that. So I'll have to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would think the county should, if we're in the middle of making changes, we should be able to postpone these things until we've got.
Finish making it everything together.
Well, I think if it's,
Well, it's
if
just,
it's
it's a whole process.
It's a wording and
Understand
make
what I'm doing.
everything.
a reasonable time.